Ruse on the Veranda by Paul McCann. Howard and May were only married 2 years when the war came. They had been blessed with a little baby boy they had named Darwin. The call went out for all men to enlist and go to fight for Australia. Most of the men answered the call. Howard enlisted like most and was proud to serve his country. The day the local lads all marched off, a good crowd had gathered to give them a send-off. The soldiers marched into the main street of the town and stood to attention outside the community hall, where all of their loved ones had assembled. Howard stood proudly to attention, with his 12-pound rifle resting on his shoulder. After hearing the order to stand at ease and fall out, Howard made his way over to his wife and son. Not knowing if they would ever see each other again, May and Howard looked to each other's eyes. "Remember, keep Smokey out the chook's cage," said Howard. May smiled and held her husband's hand. "Sure." "Don't forget to water the corn and keep the galahs away." "Howard, don't forget to come home. Keep away from bullets and things." He held her close, and with a lump in his throat, he replied, "I will, darling." She started to get a little bit teary, but had to remain strong for his sake, and she said, "Remember to write and let me know what's going on." "I will, darling. Remember, we're always only a thought away," he replied. They held each other's hands, and in one last long, heartfelt embrace, they looked into each other's eyes. They both put on a brave face before saying goodbye. A truck pulled into the street and parked beside the community hall. Then the soldiers were ordered to get on board the truck. Howard climbed up on the back with the rest of the soldiers, and the engine was started. May looked at Howard. He looked sad, sitting there with his head down, and she tried to think of something to say that would lift him. Somewhere deep down she got the courage and shouted out, "Howard! Remember, Australia loves you, and so do I." Howard looked at May and gave her a big smile. Within a few moments, the truck was out of sight. Everyone stood there for a while, crying and comforting one another. There were hugs and offers of morning tea in the hall. Some of the ladies spoke about making their own war effort each week by sending food parcels, knitting blankets and warm clothes for the soldiers. As the talk seemed more positive now, May decided to head back home, as she was tired and the baby was in need of a feed. She pushed the pram all the way back home. It was good, maybe, to have the little one with her. For about an hour they walked down the dusty old track in the heat of the day. As she approached the old homestead, May noticed that there were a few kangaroos sitting round the veranda. Sometimes the roos would come looking for a feed, but this day May wasn't really up to feeding the kangaroos or having visits from anyone or anything. She walked through the gate. She made her way to the front door. After opening the front door, she lifted Darwin out from the pram and went inside the house. Once inside, she grabbed the shotgun from above the fireplace and returned back out the veranda. She lifted the barrel into the air and let both barrels go. The kangaroos hopped off and into the scrub. She rose again to the sky, the barrel of the shotgun, and let go another 2 shots. "Keep off the veranda, bloody pests!" she screamed. Feeling a little bit better now, she placed the shotgun into the pram and sat down on the chair of the veranda. A few moments later she stood up and she walked to the front gate and shouted, "You can't say you haven't been warned." It was quiet now. She had never heard it so quiet before. Almost eerie it was. Deep in thought, she headed back towards the veranda. She started to think about how she was going to cope on her own and how lonely and empty the place would be without Howard. Then her attention was spun by a large frill-necked lizard that scurried across the veranda, and the scent of the lizard stirred Smoke from its sleep. These days the old cattle dog seemed to sleep a lot more than before. Smoke ran through the red dusty front yard, scattering a group of pink galahs on the way. The lizard soon disappeared out of sight, and Smoke, still looking around where it went to. And then Smoke began to bark and bark at the post beside the water tap. "Go lie down, Smoke. You might scare the post." Smoke came running over to May, who had stopped thinking and feeling sorry for herself. Work had to be done, and that was that. Howard was gone, and she had to carry on. The next thing she heard was the baby screaming inside the house. She ran inside and cradled Darwin in her arms. "Oh, poor baby. If it's not one thing, it's another. Sure, life's a hard battle, isn't it, my little son?" The crying stopped, and the baby settled down again. She took the old steel tub down from the wall and filled it with water. In the heat of the day, she gave Darwin a splash bath, and when she was finished, she wrapped him up in the blanket. She carried the bath water out to the corn and watered each stalk from the ears to the roots. She checked to see if the chickens had laid any eggs and brought back 2 into the house. Evening came and she made an omelette for tea. Time passed and the first letter arrived from Howard. May was so excited and frantically opened up the envelope to read the news and the contents of the letter. It began, "My darling May, hello. It's quite different here. Quiet tonight. I thought I'd maybe take the chance to write to you. I'm doing lots of things here. We're doing fine. Lots of the Aussie lads here and me, well, we seem all to be young bucks just out of school. I made a good friend. His name is Norm. He's an artist. Sometimes during the day he does drawings of the people and the places here where we are. And, you know, we camped here near a field, scattered with tulips. Sending you a little sketch of them that Norm did. He asked after you and Darwin. I miss you lots. Give Darwin a big kiss and hug from his dad. And I hope the corn tastes good this year. Always, love, from Howard." May put the letter in a special box and she put the picture of the tulips in a wooden frame that she had. And she put the frame picture and hung it up near the bed that night, and she looked at it until she closed her eyes, imagining what it was like to be there with Howard. And then she drifted off to sleep. In the letter that Howard had sent, he omitted the real truth from his young wife, and he often did it so easily, so she wouldn't be so worried. If Norm had really sketched a picture of where they were, it would have shown a much different picture in a cold and damp battlefield Howard and the other soldiers huddled together in trenches. They were constantly under attack from the enemy, and many of their battalion had been killed. The next morning, May went and had a look at the corn. She decided it was time to harvest, so she brought Darwin outside and placed him in a wooden fruit box, and then she started to pick off the corn cob by cob of the crop. Darwin looked up at her intensely, and now and then she spoke to him and told him all about the wonderful things that his dad was doing for Australia. The little nipper tried to speak, but he didn't make much sense. May took him up and gave him a cuddle. After the crop was picked, she thought how beautiful it looked, and decided to share some of the other ladies the corn that had been growing half the year in the local community hall. She was glad to make the journey into town that day, speaking with the other adults, which was important for her. She shared Howard's letter and the news that he had told her. They were pleased and happy to accept the corn from May, and in return offered some carrots and cabbage. After tea and scones, May pushed the pram back home. When she arrived at the front yard, again, there was a little mob of kangaroos sitting there on the veranda. Once she opened the door, she put the baby in the cot and grabbed the shotgun from the fireplace, and she ran, stepping out onto the veranda, raising up the barrel in the air and letting both barrels go, and she shouted, "Get off the bloody veranda!" One of the roos hopped off in such a hurry that it knocked over the fence. May stood there and took a deep breath and whispered, "Relax, May. It's only a fence." She returned back to the house. She went inside to comfort Darwin, who was screaming. She lifted him up and walked around the house, talking softly to him about his dad, who was so proud of him. The dark night fell and Smoke began to bark at the moon. Or was it another lizard? Or maybe just a fence post in the shadow of the moon? Or another whatever it was. May opened up the window and shouted, "Okay, Smoke, we get the message. Go back to sleep." After Smoke heard her voice, he settled down and it was quiet again. Darwin was sleeping there by the bed, but she found she couldn't sleep. She just couldn't settle that night, so she got up and did some knitting and thought about Howard, dropped a stitch or two and wished that she hadn't. Then her eyes began to go together and the clock on the wall started to chime, brought her back to reality. Her eyes started to go together. And the morning came. She woke with the needle still in her hand and a stiff neck. She got up and looked through the window at the morning sunrays splattered across the sky. She thought about Howard again, put the kettle on. Little Nipper woke up and she went in, kissed him, lifted him, threw him up in the air and he squealed. But she caught him and then she kissed his chubby cheeks again. Again she threw him up in the air and he let go another squeal in wonder. She took him out and fed Darwin, and the dog then also got a feed before herself made some tea and toast. Then she got dressed and took the little Nipper into town to collect some things from the grocery shop. When she got in, she called into the community hall, and she was so happy to have another letter there from Howard, which she put away in her basket until she got home. She collected her greengroceries then and spent a little while talking with some of the ladies there in the auxiliary group before heading back home again. The roos were back on the veranda when she got there, and May again started to realise that She better try to live with them. As she walked into her front yard, she plucked some of the cabbage that she got, and she scattered some of the leaves in the front yard. The kangaroos all hopped over and started to pick them up. Then she parked the pram in the veranda. She looked at little Darwin and brought him inside the house. After she fed the baby, she made a cup of tea. She sat down and opened up the letter from Howard. "Hello, my darling. I got so much to tell you, but so little time to write. We're all in good spirits, getting lots of fun here, and lots of sun as well. The beach is near to where we are here stationed. There are these beautiful purple flowers scattered all the ground and the trees and the hills everywhere where we are camped. I wish you could be here. Norm's done another sketch for you. He really got a wonderful talent, you know. When he comes home, he says that he's going to open up a studio somewhere and start painting images of the war, he says, on canvas. Maybe we'll have an exhibition and you and I can go there. All the lads are waiting for orders. We still haven't seen the enemy yet. Miss you and our little son. But the day will come and I'll be with you both again, hopefully before much longer. Love, Howard." May stood up and she went to the window. She looked out and she whispered into the sky, "Remember, Australia loves you. So do I, Howard." May placed the letter in a special box with the other one. After finding another empty frame, she put the sketch of the beach and she hung it beside the other one on the wall. The baby started crying again and she went in to settle him down. She lifted him up and it brought another scream from the little nipper as she threw him in the air. Then she took him out on the veranda and they both sat there for some time. May looked out at the distant horizon thinking of Howard and all the boys over there and sent out a loving thought. She tried to imagine what it would be like for them all and remembered the words that Howard had said the day she left. "Remember, we're always just a thought away." She thought about him and all the other residents fighting for Australia, those proud soldiers serving their country who also had to leave their loved ones, residents of a war that they didn't want to fight, but stood up for the country on behalf of all of the people fighting for peace. A half a dozen white cockatoos then landed on the fence, followed by a few more kookaburras who glided over the house, perched on the gum trees around the property. Their squawking brought May back to reality again. That old familiar call stirred into her heart, rose to action again, so she got up to get the nappies off the line and get the ironing done. The sink was still a mess from the night before, and there was some cleaning up to be done round the house. She looked into the small playpen on the veranda, and the baby looked back up at her and smiled, brought a smile and a giggle to her face. She looked back into the small playpen of the veranda. "Come on, me little man. It's just you and me now. Dad's at war, and we got to keep the fort until he comes back. Somebody's got to keep the thing going. Please, God, bring him back home safe," she said. The little nipper tried to talk, but again he didn't make much sense. Some nights May cried softly in the silence, but she never allowed herself to fall to despair. She kept busy and she knitted and she stitched and she made some curtains. And the home was always spotless. As time passed, the Roos became regular visitors on the veranda. May got used to them now and their company. She gave them whatever scraps of food she had left. Smoke had no worries either about them being on the veranda. May had started a little garden, and for some strange reason the kangaroos kept away from the vegetables. There was a bond of trust that had developed between the kangaroos and May. Sometimes she found herself talking to the kangaroos, who sat close to her on the veranda. The roos had become kind of friends. One day, as the baby was crawling round the yard, a black snake appeared on the scene. Before May could even reach her little child, one of the roos brought its tail down heavily on the snake's back and the head, and proceeded to jump and hop on all over the snake. When the danger had gone and the snake had disappeared, the roo hopped away. On another occasion, some wild brumbies strayed into the yard, only to be confronted by the kangaroos that chased them all off into the scrub. May was astonished, but comforted by the kangaroos and the protection that they were bringing. As crazy as it would seem, they had become protectors. She gave each of them a name, and after a while, they even responded to that. She wanted to tell everyone about the roos on the veranda, but she thought if she did, people might think she was a bit weird. Some days she felt Hard's presence so near that she almost heard him speak to her. Sometimes the loneliness was too much. She found she could talk to God about things, and she felt the urge to build a little shrine somewhere in the garden. A shrine that became a tribute for all the Aussie soldiers, and she made it a special visit each morning to go there and sit for a while and pray. She made the shrine out of bush rock and some cement that she had got from one of the local farmers. She carved figures out of the wood and started to paint them and placed them inside the shrine, along with some wooden crosses for each of the soldiers that Hard used to talk about. And May woke up one morning and she heard the sound of scratching and digging around her shrine. Cautiously she looked out the window and she saw the roos digging up all of the soil around the shrine. She was furious. She ran outside screaming, "Hey John, what are you doing? Jake, stop that! Get away from there!" The kangaroos all hopped off, and May stood in wonder, thinking. Suddenly, in an instant, she knew the war was over. She had a premonition. She got down and kissed the ground. She ran inside the house. She lifted the baby up in her arms and threw him as high as she could. He screamed in delight, and she caught him again and threw him up in the air over and over. That same day, the local fire truck pulled up in a hurry in the front garden. May looked out the window. She saw one of the ladies from the auxiliary group running from the truck. With her arms in the air, she started shouting, "May, have you heard the news?" "What news?" May said. "It's over. The war. It's over. The boys are coming home." The two ladies threw their arms around each other and they danced like never before. Dancing in the dust. Sure enough, later on that week, as May was sitting on the veranda, an army truck pulled up and Hard got out the truck. They both ran into each other's arms and cried and laughed as little baby Darwin came crawling down from the house. That evening, as they all sat out on the veranda, a few of the kangaroos hopped by the old house, and there they lay in the last rays of the sun until night came and it was time to leave. The end.